Hey guys, Richard at Aficionado Channel and reefs.com here. How you guys doing today? Today we'd like to go into the eye candy video of Reef A Palooza California 2022. Let's go.
Alright guys, so let's talk about all the highlight and all the eye candies from the show. When we say eye candies, we can't really leave out the corals. Now, vendors from the show brought their A game. They brought many variety of corals and all different colors and sizes as well. Now, one thing about these type of shows and attending to them is, as a person in the industry, you kind of put your hands in the pulse of the trend of that's what goes around in the hobby. For example, a few years ago, it used to be like acroporas, then zoanthus, then micromusa lords, and then back to chalices, then back to acropora, and then it just cycles. And we just like to see what comes and what goes and what is coming for the future. From what I have seen, from personal opinion, from observation from these shows for the last couple of years, it hasn't been changing so much. I mean, the last great trend was torches when we had some bans in Indonesia. And even when the ban was lifted, torches are still hot commodity. It did die down slightly, but it's still a hot thing. But also acroporas and designer corals, frags like Candies and other stuff are still demanding primo prices. And another observation that I have made by observing other people was that they are looking and picking up more meaty type of LPS corals. Now, prices of cinerinas and acanthos have seemed to be cheaper than previous shows, which was a big welcome sign for a meat coral lover like myself. This show being hosted in California didn't disappoint in all the variety of corals because California, much like Florida, is one of the major hubs in the United States, if not the biggest. And they had many beautiful acroporas as well as gonioporas, alveoporas, torches, acanthophilias, trichophilias, lobophilias. They had different type of anemones of all different colors, rock flower anemones, all different type of stuff that just was mind-boggling and just explosion of colors. I personally enjoyed all the aquaculture farmed corals. Not only they are beautiful, but they're hardier because they're used to usual tank parameters that we keep and the swings that comes with our glass boxes. What was really neat was finding a whole bunch of pectinias in this show. Now, they're not usually the most popular corals to display at a show. I don't really see them too often. But at this show, it really displayed a whole bunch of different types of pectinias, especially the really popular Space Invader pectinias in our hobby. And the vibrance of colors, the tentacles coming out from everywhere, it really showcased once again, and it reminded us why this pectinia is so popular in our hobby. Now, different from corals, John from Clam Mania, this is actually his hometown, he always brings these amazing aquaculture clams, and this time corals as well. I really enjoyed all the vibrant, healthy clams that he brings, and you know what, and when he's aquacultured, it's winner in my book. His booth is always packed, and I was happy to see it was so well received. He had to go back to his facility multiple times just to stock back up so he had inventory to sell. that was a great thing to see. One of the things that I seen was 10K bounce mushroom coral from Coral Exotic. Now, I know this guy for a few years now. He is an avid hobbyist turned a vendor, and he has this eye for this most unique corals that I've ever seen. And he grew this piece out for 4 years, and it was a big, beautiful, and had all the distinctive marks that makes the OG bounce mushroom really special from all the other bounce mushrooms. But wow, price was out of this world. Wow. Another thing that really caught my attention was fish, but we'll get back to that in a little bit. Let's get into the best tank of the show. Many folks put together show tanks, and the usual folks like Ecotech, Neptune Systems, and Kessel, they did a great job. But there was a surprising contender that came out and just stole the show, in my personal opinion. And without further ado, that tank, the best tank of the show, it belonged to SDC, the Sea Dwelling Creatures. They are a wholesaler in California that deals with fish and corals, and they brought their A game. Kevin Gaines, he is no stranger to the hobby and person with immense artistic eyes, and he really impressed me with a one-of-a-kind gorgeous tank that was filled with not only corals but with amazing fish. And for those of you guys who know me, I'm a huge wrasse geek and I love my tangs, and they had wrasses and tangs galore. Something that really struck out was pair of rhomboid wrasses and red margin wrasse, mustard tang, and so many different beautiful fish. And a lot of these fish are like super male quality, and it just brought so much vibrance and movement in the tank, and everybody was mesmerized as they stopped by and looked at all these beautiful creatures. Now that's not all. True highlight of the tank was raw iron butterfly fish. This is a breathtaking fish from Japan. I first saw this fish in Fort Lauderdale, Magna, where Koji Wada of Blue Harbor hand delivered it to Julian Sprung, where he acclimated into his sump to deliver to Global Oceanic Life Wholesaler for the show in Magna. I first saw this fish then and I just fell in love, but it kept me away because he was such a finicky eater, as well as being a notorious coral picker. Now, also, I'm not a huge fan of a few adult species of Japanese fish, like Interruptus angel and raw iron as being one of them. But this one defied my expectations and amazed me in its beauty. I found myself glued to the tank, hogging up all the space, and I just wanted to apologize to the fellow hobbyists and fellow show attendees for taking so long and drooling over this fish and the tank. It was a bit skittish in the beginning, but it was soon outgoing, eating out of the hands, readily accepting many different types of food like TDO pellets that was being offered. What a beauty, what a treat. This truly was a highlight of the show for me. Runner-up from best tank of the show is eShops. Now that's very surprising because this tank or desk mate is only 3.8 gallons, but what they did with it was nothing short of amazing. Now the shape of this rock is very unique. As you could tell, it is the shape of a heart. They mimicked this from Heart Lagoon in Australia, the Great Barrier Reef in Australia, and from there they made this using two different color zoanthus to create a different accent to make a nice little heart-shaped rock that is floating. Now, how they made this float is actually very different from the traditional way of what people would normally use to make things float or floating aquascape. No magnet was used, nor any clear acrylic rod was used to make this. So what they did was they glued the acrylic plate to the back acrylic wall of the tank, and then they drilled. What they used was nylon screw to hold it in place. And then they just put the rock over it, and which was big enough to cover the small plate that was sitting on it, and no one knew any better. How they did this looks simply amazing. You can't really see anything that's floating unless you're like really closely zooming in, and even then it was hard to find out. I didn't even know until they told me what they did. So kudos to them, they did a great job. It looked phenomenal, very minimalist look, and very eye-catching for sure. This was very, very well utilized in that little tiny space that they had for those tanks. It was a very good display tank for the show. Now this is very different from our traditional eye candy. This one actually was put together by the Reef group that puts together the Reef A Palooza show. And they made this touch tank for the children, and I really enjoy our little frags running around, getting excited about ocean life, and getting exposure of its beauties. And I think they did a great job setting up this touch tank. Everyone was excited. They saw stingrays, they saw small sharks. It was overall a good time, and for me, this was one of the highlights of the eye candies that I really wanted to share with you guys. And people with artistic sides came out in a full scale. Check out this amazing UV reactive paintings, as well as UV reactive magnetic prints, as well as posters. These were amazing. One other thing that was really outstanding was these amazing aquascapes coming from different vendors from West Coast. Now, this really, for me, it separated California from its siblings such as New York or Orlando locations, because they really came out in full force and showed their mastery in artistic wizardry with aquascaping and putting rocks together. And they don't just slab it all on. For example, look at this aquascape done with Marco rocks, for example. You don't see any joints or glues or anything like that. They took their time, made these into a one-of-a-kind, unique bonsai-esque shape, and they covered all the joints using Marco rocks rubbles, as well as their powderized substance from their rock, to cover up all the joints from the glues. Paying attention and focusing onto these small details really brought out the design to overall perfection. And for those of you guys who really like that purple look on your rocks, Real Reef rocks were on full display in many different tanks, as well as Carypsis rock on their arch rocks, as well as many different shapes of rocks that they offered. They really made one-of-a-kind pieces. I really enjoyed the Planet Aquarium's aquascaping. They made one of these floating scapes as well as they really did a great job on creating an aquascape that is so desirable to many people that was on the show. Now, what was your favorite eye candy piece from the show? Please comment down below. Let me know what you think. Thank you so much for watching, and you guys have a great day, and I'll see you on the next video. Happy reefing.